Welcome, everyone, to Tomorrow's Problem Podcast. My name is Jacob.
And I'm Nolan.
And on this episode, we are concluding our brief history on school shootings with part 3, From Worst to Present Day.
Yeah, and so we've been talking about a lot of different kinds of school shooters, perpetrators, and this kind of latter half, all the way up until today, is kind of big shift into different kind of psychological issues, psychotic shooters, traumatized
That's right.
children that kind of lash out. And so we're going to kind of go through different prime examples.
Yeah, and we're most of the stories we shared in the previous parts were kind of a little bit maybe unknown to a lot of the audience. These ones are all very, even to this day, they're still a part of the discussion.
Infamous.
Yeah, very infamous events. Starting, of course, with Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech. And first thing I wanted to share about Virginia Tech is I was in Virginia when it happened. I was going to high school out in Bruton, which is a little high school in Williamsburg, and we had to shut our school down. Everyone was it was really somber. We didn't really understand what was going on. I was like a high schooler, and so all we knew was that there had been a shooting at another school, but we didn't know where it was or what happened.
Yeah.
But the Virginia Department of Defense was shutting schools all across Virginia because they thought it was a terrorist attack. So calculating, so violent, so targeted. The Virginia Tech shooting was perpetrated by Sung Wee Cho.
Yeah.
It was in 2007, April 16th, 2007. And there were some interesting stats about the shooting that I just wanted to share. It was around 11 minutes long, 174 rounds fired, and in that time, 30 people were murdered, 17 were injured at Norris Hall, which is where he attacked all the students,
Yeah.
and then 2 had been previously murdered at a dorm.
You know, it's interesting just looking at this from a bird's eye view. We see a lot of school shootings happening around, the infamous one in Columbine happening April 20th. Mm-hmm. This one's April 16th.
Yeah.
We have a couple more too, I know, peppered around there.
Jimmy calls it like suicide season, violence season, like that kind of spring break, it's coming out of winter.
And I remember reading, it was touched on briefly in that last United States Secret Service report we read. But yeah, there is a few theories. One is, it's kind of the end of the school year. There's kind of a climax of societal expectations, of, your academic year. You could be, moving on to college or another school. So it is really kind of a very high stress point for students. So it makes sense that kind of a lot of these shootings happen around then.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a phenomenon.
Yeah.
So Cho was born in South Korea. His family immigrated when he was around 8 years old, and they actually moved to Fairfax County, which another Nolan
the stopping point
is where I was born. So.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I bet you didn't know that. But I was actually born in Fairfax County, and he moved into like a Korean neighborhood, and his family noticed pretty early on that he was very quiet, very anxious around people. He wouldn't talk to not only his family, but just anyone in general.
Yeah.
And so when he was around, like early age, right? So he was diagnosed with selective mutism, which for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's severe anxiety disorder where a person is unable to speak in certain social situations.
Yeah.
So selectively mute. He only spoke in certain circumstances, and he was not a happy child.
No.
A lot of people noticed that, even his own family, that he never hugged anyone, never greeted others, and just basically kept to himself.
Yeah. And yeah, he was bullied a little bit, but, like we say, we really don't take a whole lot of credence with, just, unless there is, we see some very severe, cruel, violent bullying happening. Everyone gets bullied.
Yeah.
It's kind of, unfair to kind of loop that into the overlying problem. It really isn't a bullying issue.
Yeah, no, and he in his media package, just to jump ahead, where he sent a media package to the world to let everyone know about all the offenses that were made against him.
Yeah.
A lot of people were confused because no one really talked to him. He didn't really talk to anyone.
And that's kind of the irony of Sung Hee, is that he felt angry at society for not accepting him, but he was the one holding himself back, and he was the one not talking to people and being, very withdrawn. So it's really weird. Most people I know that are, reserved, introvert people, they're not angry at the world that they're introverts. They kind of find comfort in it.
Yeah. Yeah, and he that behavior kind of morphed into more toxic behavior. Just kind of grew. So later on in college, he was getting in trouble for taking pictures of his classmates, writing ultra-violent material in his classes. So disturbing, in fact, that his teachers were communicating with each other, trying to get him help.
Yeah.
He was referred to a psychologist, psychiatrist, to be able to deal with his issues. And he was actually sent to an outpatient treatment facility because of his suicidal ideation and joking with his roommates. Or he told them that he was just joking, but sent to an outpatient unit, and just from there, nothing really happened. Never really
materialized from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing. No consequence. When he went to the outpatient, treatment facility, they just told him, or he just told them, I'm just joking.
Yeah. And if you remember our discussion with Jimmy, there really isn't a whole lot you can do with forcing someone to go to a mental facility. That if they don't want to be there, they don't have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the biggest thing, so Dr. Lehman actually categorizes him as a psychotic shooter because he had so many delusions and hallucinations, and not like in the visual hallucination, but just kind of delusions of what was going on in the world around him.
Yeah.
And so we see that all the way up until the attack. Should we go through the attack really quick?
Yeah, and real quick too, I know we've said this in a few episodes, but definitely check out what Dr. Langman has collected on Sung-Hee Cho on schoolshooter.info.
Okay.
A ton of his essays and his media package, and we'll talk maybe later about Richard McBeef, one of his stage plays he wrote, which is one of Nolan and I's favorite pieces of literature.
Yeah.
Really.
It's very moving.
Yeah. But let's get into the attack.
So the first thing that Cho did was he went to this girl, Emily Hilscher, who lived in the dorms, and we think that he had a crush on her, or some form of attraction, because he went straight to her room. She lived on the 3rd floor and waited for her to get dropped off by her boyfriend. So he knew her schedule, knew where she lived, went and killed her, and the RA that was actually over that floor heard the commotion, and he was killed in the crossfire, or when he showed up, he was killed as well by Cho.
Yeah.
And that was around 7 a.m. So that was kind of in between 7:30, and he murdered her, and then he went back and got his media package, took that, dropped it off at the post office.
And at that point, no one knew that this was going to be a bigger shooting. They thought this was an isolated incident, so the police attention and everything was kind of focused around that.
On the murder,
Yeah.
Yeah, and Virginia Tech is a huge campus, more than 30,000, which is more than 30,000 students and faculty. So it's like a small city, and if someone gets murdered in a city, you don't shut the city down. You send out a warning. There's a info that goes out. And so a lot of complaint was that they didn't shut the school down. Well, it's
really?
You can't shut that big moving machine for something like that, no matter how callous that sounds.
Totally, yeah.
It's just the reality.
Yeah.
So classes start at 8 o'clock, about half an hour after this murder takes place. And at some point, Sung-Hee Cho gets there, and we'll dive down into the actual minute by minute in future episodes.
Yeah.
But notable characteristics about this attack is that he locked the doors. He had brought these big chains, locked all the doors of Norris Hall, so no one could get in. He actually kind of cased the classrooms that he was going to shoot. For example, he went to the engineering class or the literature class and would look through the door.
Yeah.
And students who survived said that was really bizarre. In hindsight, they thought, that's weird. It's the end of the school year. How does someone not know where their class is? Right?
Yeah.
Who's this kid? They didn't recognize him, which is interesting, right?
Yeah. Well, another thing that's interesting with really is that when you look at school shooters, they oftentimes things don't go according to plan. You know, very few times do their plans materialize how they expect it to. Mm-hmm. This is the rare occasion where a school shooter planned something out meticulously and it went pretty much exactly according to plan.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he, you know, it was an execution style shootings. Mm-hmm. A lot, you know, because at this point, the standard was to hide under your desk.
Yeah.
And so he was just walking down aisles, just executing them. And one of the victims, one of the professors, was a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah. Yeah, like in the 80s or 90s.
Yeah. Just such a waste of life.
Yeah. Well, I think they were talking about hate.
Really? In that class?
That class was about hate, like wanton hate.
God.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, let's move on to Sandy Hook.
Yeah. Out of the frying pan into the fire.
Yep. It doesn't get a whole lot better.
Yeah. They become more atrocious, honestly. Yeah. They just become Uvalde, right? Like there's just the increase in callousness is...
You have to wonder if, as the consciousness of school shooters, you know, it becomes more of a thing, and you know, and just like the cultural zeitgeist, mm-hmm. that these shooters are now seeing it as one-upmanship.
Yeah.
You know, it's now numbers to beat. It's mm-hmm. now you've got to make a bigger impression in the media and on, you know, in people's minds mm-hmm. every time. Anyways, Sandy Hook happened in 2012, December 14th, perpetrated by Adam Lanza. You know, one thing that characterizes this, it was a very short shooting. Yep. It was under 5 minutes, somewhere from 3 to 5 minutes, and he killed 27 people. Mm-hmm. Most of them children, 20 children and 7 women teachers. Yep. So it was, I'm sure, I mean, everyone knows that Sandy Hook was a big pivoting point in this discussion around school shootings, especially gun laws, gun control.
Gun laws, mental health as well, right?
Yeah. And so Adam grew up living with his mother, Nancy, 5 miles away from Sandy Hook. She was a gun enthusiast. She had a lot of guns, and Adam had access to them. Adam had a lot of pressure in school. He had very severe anxiety and OCD, autism, And when he started going to middle school and they started having to like change classes throughout the day, that was like too much for him, too much sensory overload. So he had to pull himself out of school.
It's a huge characteristic. Yeah. Like any kind of change of scenery or
exactly, and
that, is very difficult.
And that comes back later.
With autism. Yeah.
And he was, like we said, very OCD, and so he had very like kind of a strict, laid out day every day, and he would write down. In terms of the material we have from school shooters, Adam Lanza we have the most. Yeah. We have the most of his journal writings, his essays.
Stuff's still coming out too. They just found his YouTube channel in like 2021.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of it's been taken down now.
Oh, okay.
They have transcripts and all the videos that they didn't know it was him.
Wow. But he was also anorexic. Mm-hmm. He and you could probably attribute that to his OCD and some of the peculiarities surrounding that. He was obsessed with Dance Dance Revolution, and I always have to say when we talk about Adam Lanza, and that he would work himself into a frenzy playing Dance Dance Revolution. Pretty interesting.
I wonder if that was part of the OCD and kind of that. Like,
maybe just like perfect, hitting the button.
Yeah. Because Dance Dance Revolution is a little obsessive, like trying to get the perfect steps and.
It's like a Simon Says.
Yeah, exactly. Changed his socks 20 times a day. His mom was buying so many socks and tissue boxes because he had to grab everything with tissue.
Yeah.
Right, just all those characteristics that come with OCD.
And he really interesting journal articles. He wrote about his thoughts on pedophilia, with 30 pages.
Defending it.
Yeah.
I just read it. I finished it yesterday. And it's actually one of the reasons I think I know why he targeted children now. Yeah. Just the way he talks about children and those kind of philosophical points that he asserts that, like, this is why we should be able to take advantage of children. Mm. Or they have a right to all the things we have. Yeah. Any age.
Yeah. Anyways, what kind of instigated the attack is believed is that his mother, Nancy, decided that, because obviously Adam wasn't doing well, that they were going to move to a different town. And of course, this change in scenery, in his lifestyle, completely flipped a switch in Adam, and he perpetrated this horrible attack. The attack happened on December 14th, like I said. It started with him murdering his mother at 9:30, shot her 4 times in the head. And he arrived, obviously he lived close by, he arrived within minutes with a Bushmaster rifle, shot through the window next to the front door, which is interesting because, this goes to show the school security had just been updated prior to that semester.
Doors were locked, everything was...
Yeah, he had a new visitor management requirements with ID by video monitor control. And, and it kind of just shows that a lot of these solutions are just Band-Aids. And, when a school invests money into, new windows or something, that's great, but it really isn't a solution that can account for anything that can happen in a shooting.
Yeah, there's a lot of different layers to safety and security.
Anyone that knows anything about Sandy Hook knows that the shooting is very distressing. Like I said, 20 children died, and 6 teachers. Most of them in classes. He broke into classes and just gunned them down. We won't go into the details, but just to convey kind of how evil Adam Lanza was. A little girl recounts hearing one of her classmates screaming, "Help me, I don't want to be here." To which Adam Lanza responded, "Well, you're here," followed by gunshot sounds. So, we don't want to focus on the evil that happened there, but something that I really think is really cool is the janitor, Rick Thorne, running through the hallways, learning classrooms. He was one of the first people to see when Adam Lanza walked into the administrative office and shot the principal. He was one of the first people to hear that and immediately started running. Instead of running out of the building, running to every classroom and learning people. And he was awarded with accommodations after that.
Oh, yeah. Janitors are like the unsung heroes. Jacob and I have noticed.
Yeah.
They are always the first ones to alert, and they're just like running around, helping the helpless.
Yeah.
We've seen that time after time.
We need to do a count, some kind of janitor count.
We should do like
the janitor awards.
Highlight. Yeah. Because Rick Thorne is a hero. Like he's
totally
saved lives because they were able to lock their doors. The reasons those first classrooms were targeted is because they were right there.
They were closest to the entry of the school.
They didn't have time to lock their doors. They didn't have enough time to get hidden away. So, Mr. Thorne saved a lot of lives.
So those of you at home, give your janitor a pat on the back.
Yeah. They're looking out for you.
Yeah. Yeah, so Adam Lanza is definitely classified as psychotic.
Definitely.
Because of all his mental predicaments, but there was a lot of hate in that kid.
Yeah.
Obviously with his essays, he had a very cynical outlook on life.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously his lack of socialization, you can probably say that's probably what attributed to his misogyny.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he felt trapped too because I think because of his mental illness.
Totally.
A famous story of him is where he called into a radio show and talked about Travis the chimp, which was a monkey that was raised by humans and attacked humans. And he empathized with the monkey and said, "I understand what that monkey feels like."
Yeah.
I feel, he felt trapped in a society that he didn't understand.
Anyways. Yeah, so there are a lot of repercussions happen from Sandy Hook in terms of gun control. And still to this day, Adam Jones is in court right now for defaming one of the fathers of the victim.
Yeah. Sandy Hook Promise, a lot of good nonprofits came from this as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can talk to some of those people in the future, but a lot of good media and awareness has been made about the mental health aspect, looking at warning signs, looking at, it just makes me think of Dr. Langman. He's somewhere in history, he's gathering these documents, and every time this happens, he's probably just beating himself up or something.
Anyways, on to Stone Mason Douglas High.
Nicholas Cruz. All right, so Mark, this is another one I remember vividly.
We had 6 good years in between then.
Yeah. This was, I was actually living out in Utah, and one of my friends is from Florida, and we were at the gym together, and she was looking at the TV, and she was like, "Nolan, I'm from that neighborhood. Like, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas is right down the street. Like, I know kids that went there. I know who, I know where the parents live, like, it was super close to home." She was super upset, And I felt that, like, I remember watching the TV and just, it hadn't happened in a while. And this was just ruthless. It was quick again, under 5 minutes. Crazy amount of rounds fired,
Yeah.
Nicholas Cruz was firing at anyone he could.
Yeah, and Cruz did have a good relationship with. He had a very rough, pedigree. His parents were both heavily into drugs, and they couldn't raise him. He was raised by his grandparents, or was it adopted family?
Yeah, the adopted family after his mother died.
That's right.
So very rough upbringing. His mother was using drugs while she was pregnant with him.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of developmental issues, educational problems, like
behavioral issues.
Behavioral issues throughout high school. Very aggressive with other students. Still got along with people, still made friends, but then also just didn't know how to work through those relationships.
And school counselors, teachers, and the adults in his life were very aware of the outrageous and disturbing behavior he exhibited, including classmates. And so there were some interventions with school leadership.
Yeah, and one thing that we can touch on with Nicholas Cruz is we see a lot of change in the way that intervention is happening with troublesome students. You can't just expel them, you can't just transfer them. Nicholas Cruz was kind of punted to different high schools, and Marjory Stoneman Douglas was actually one of the safest high schools in Florida.
Really?
Before this happened.
Yeah.
It was like they had like an award. It was very safe neighborhood, and so he was getting punted around, and he finally landed in Marjory Stoneman Douglas.
Right when the bomb went off.
Yeah, and I mean he got expelled, right? So he was bitter.
Yeah.
And then his mom had passed away a few months before.
That's
so
right.
It was like a perfect storm.
And a breakup, right? And he just had a breakup.
Yeah, very troublesome dating life. But yeah, a lot of people knew. There's a lot of documentation. Again, if you can Google this, but there's a slideshow of all the people who knew disturbing things that he had shown them or talked to them about before the attack.
Yeah.
So, decapitated animals, weapons, showing pictures of violent material to people at school. Like people knew about Nicholas.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the attack, just an interesting point. Obviously, we don't want to go into how he murdered how many is it?
17.
17.
Yeah.
17 kids. But this really was like the first time that we had a lot of students on Facebook Live while this was happening, recording on their cell phones. This was a viral school shooting.
Oh, yeah.
So this kind of welcomes in a new generation of terror for kids that, you don't even have to be a part of a school shooting. You can see what could potentially happen in your school online.
It's like shared trauma.
Yeah.
Shared PTSD now.
Crazy.
Yeah, and that changed. I mean, after Parkland, you remember all those walkouts? Kids started answering. They're like, we don't feel safe in schools. They started responding.
Yeah.
Because obviously safety hadn't been changing.
Totally.
And they felt let down because a lot of the police response was atrocious.
Oh yeah, the SRO. Yeah. Do we have his name?
Jinx.
Scott Peterson.
Yeah.
Scott Peterson got charges for his lack of his cowardice during he basically ran the other direction when the shooting started happening.
Yeah. And they had video footage of him misdirecting people.
Yeah.
And who knows what happens in the moment, but it's interesting that maybe he shouldn't be in that position.
Yeah, exactly.
Rick Thorne should be the SRO because Rick Thorne's going to run around and warn people and save kids.
Yeah.
But, people have to kind of take a look at themselves and decide if they're willing to lay their life down or put their life on the line for children. Nothing against him.
Yeah.
There's a lot against him, but...
And not only Scott Peterson, the SRO, but the Broward County Sheriff's Office also received widespread criticism for their lack of effective response too, because they definitely fumbled the ball at the beginning of them getting to the campus. Yeah. They waited way too long to get in.
Yeah. Very disorganized. Even the staff, they saw Nicholas Cruz. So walking up to the
That's right.
with his duffel bag to the classroom, and one of the first staff members to see him claimed that his training didn't call for reporting threats. You know, he's like, so you know, he didn't report it, and then what his colleague was hiding in the closet.
Yeah.
Just like, oh man.
He only has lunchtime certifications.
So yeah, there's a lot of you know, feedback that came from that, a lot of change in the way response is being done. But again, as we talked about with Columbine, like it's changed.
Yeah,
it's been changing. With first man in every time, and that still isn't happening. You know. So that leads us to our final event and our most recent one.
Yeah, which we've been able to touch on a lot, so we won't go too deep into it.
Yeah, Robb Elementary.
Robb Elementary.
And yeah, a lot of people know what's going on, and so
it's still going on.
Yeah.
It's still an active crime scene.
I believe so. I think they're going to tear it down, though.
Yeah. That's pretty much the game plan for most of these.
Standard,
yeah, it's pretty standard. Sandy Hook, they tore that down. Mm-hmm. Parkland, they tore it still needs down, or did they?
I mean, it's just one building.
Or is it still up or something since Nicholas Cruz is still in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're actually going to have the jury walk through it. Yep, that just reminded me. Yeah, they're going to go through and see that they haven't cleaned up anything. There's still blood and bullet holes and shattered glass, backpacks, everything's still there.
Wow,
that's crazy.
Anyways. Robb Elementary, Salvador Ramos. A lot of parallels with Adam Lanza. Mm-hmm. You know, you just looking from bird's eye view. Salvador shot his grandmother before he did the attack. So this paternal figure or maternal figure, I mean. Mm-hmm. He went to a school and shot young children. He went to an elementary school.
Yeah, targeted children. Obsessed with guns. He was very, you know, killing animals too. This is similar to Nicholas. I mean, again, we don't know yet, but psychopathic. He would show people videos of him killing cats. He'd show people videos of his guns. You know, people saw these signs. He was very, you know, he was an exhibitionist when it came to these dark thoughts that he had.
I think he threatened one of his coworkers at Wendy's too.
Really?
One time, a girl.
Yeah. Sending messages to people overseas. You know, there was a German girl that knew about the attack as it was happening. You know, he told her, "I shot my grandmother, and now I'm going to go shoot an elementary school." So a lot of people knew some kind of behavior. But here's another thing that Jacob and I have talked about. This kind of violence has been normalized. You really can't spot someone like this because you can go on any modern warfare, you know, game lobby, and people talk like this.
Yeah.
You'd never know the difference.
No.
I've listened to it myself. And it's, you know, people are always like, why didn't people see the signs? It's like, well, it's because he's not really different than these kids.
Yeah, it's kind of a cycle, you know, these shootings and these events make the world more cynical, and it makes people more comfortable with wallowing in sadness and just, you know, acting terribly towards each other.
This attack was worse than Sandy Hook. You know, killed more children. Also, he killed them in a horrific way.
That's right. 21 killed.
They didn't know. They couldn't recognize. They couldn't ID the children. That was how bad it was. It was pulp. He was in there for 77 minutes shooting these kids. Which, I mean, not compared to Adam Lanza, it wasn't as, you know, he went in there and slaughtered them, like, you know, and we've already moved on from it. You know what I mean? It's been a month, 2 months, and we're already kind of like, okay, gun control.
Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah.
And of course, the kind of defining characteristic of the Robb Elementary shooting is the police response. Of course, just, 2 weeks ago, we got the footage from inside the school. There was a huge blowback because a few of the police officers were, you know, having very concerning behavior while they're waiting out in the hallway where kids are being slaughtered. You know, meters away. Joking.
And they ran.
Smiles.
Continue.
There was that really interesting bit where that fellow was looking at his phone and people were freaking out about the Punisher background, the dude on his phone. But he was, out, he was the husband of one of the teachers.
He was checking his phone to see if she had texted him. Yeah.
So it sucks. It really sucks that there is this political pull on each side to kind of, muck up the other side when they can. And when we really look at these situations, there's so much nuance that it is so hard to cast some judgment on any of the players in here, besides obviously the perpetrators.
Yeah.
And maybe the SRO that runs away.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's kind of from beginning to end.
That's right.
And history continues, right?
The history continues. Hopefully we will have to be a long time before we need to do another brief history compilation.
And that's what we said. Jacob and I actually been planning doing this podcast back when Oxford, Michigan was the last shooting.
That's right.
Out here in the Midwest, and Ethan Crumley had attacked his high school, and we were like, let's go. And then this happened, and we
had to take a step back.
And we just had to jump in too. Like we were like, we can't let this keep going.
That's kind of the paradox of this podcast is we love talking about this stuff, but we hate talking about it because it keeps happening.
Yeah.
And it just gives us more stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we need to keep an eye out on each other. Keep an eye out for each other. I feel like part of this podcast's purpose, and I almost want to go over it again, is helping people become aware so that they can see these signs, that they can see these issues that are developing in our society, and be a part of the solution. We are all a part of the solution. Not to get it too kumbaya on,
Yeah.
We're all part of it. We can all do a part if we all live where we stand and help each other.
Yeah, and if you treat people with goodness, the odds are the people around you are going to be a little better.
Yeah.
Act a little better.
Yeah. So that kind of wraps it up. We'll be continuing on with a new series on kind of jumping into the psychological issues, warning signs, psychological warning signs.
And lock up your guns.
Yeah.
Lock up your guns. Your kids don't need to have access to your guns, you crazy parents.
Yeah. Lock your guns.
Obviously. Right?
Oh, yeah. I got a story about that, maybe for the future, about a gun.
A gun in Nolan's life?
Yeah.
Little quick one right at the end. Quick Nolan story.
So when I was a kid, my dad has, he had firearms.
He was 6'5" as a kid, by the way.
I had a gun, and my dad had a gun. He had to carry it for work. And I was like 2 or 3 years old, and he was sleeping on a Saturday morning, and he wakes up, and there's just a gun on his pillow pointed at his face. And he looks up, and he kind of just backs up slowly, and he looks over, and I'm just holding it by the handle,
Wow.
Just staring at him, smiling, like playing with it. And he just like reached over slowly, didn't want to scare me, just grabbed the gun, put it back in the drawer, and he like picked me up and played, and he was just like sweating.
Wow.
And yeah, right? Totally accidental. I was 2 years old. I was 2, 3 years old. I didn't know what, you know what I mean? Just found it. Lock your guns up.
Lock your guns up.
All right.
All right, and we will see you on the next episode. We are going to just continue with some normal episodes until we get to meet with Dr. Lehman in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that, and we will, next week, bring a fun story for you. Probably won't be very fun, but all right.
Bye.